This week, the Apache go from a minor annoyance to the Confederacy to a huge threat for all of Arizona. For hours, the Confederates slowly advance up towards the Union, who are situated around the Masonic College of Lexington. They are met with no forward resistance. The Union have definitely retired to their fortifications to make a last stand. It actually takes hours for them to get all the way up there. But after hours of slowly crawling behind the hemp bales, the Confederates open fire. Long range does not work the best to their numbers. They hope to take the earthworks by the bayonet. And for 2 hours, the fighting is fierce. You can hear cries of the wounded and the dying. But more than the brutality of the battle, what worries Colonel Mulligan is the fact the day is going against him. The battle lasts for 2 hours, as I said, but around 2 p.m., Colonel Mulligan asks for terms of surrender. The Confederates lost 30 men dead and 120 wounded to take Lexington. The Union lost 36 killed, 117 wounded, unsuccessfully defending it. But they surrendered. So 3,000 Union men are captured but then immediately paroled. What does this mean? Now, when you are captured, you become a prisoner of war. But let's say you're an army, you don't want to be bogged down or have to feed the former enemy. Well, you could parole them. It works like this. The captured soldier agrees to not take up arms again, and you allow him to go home. What happens if the soldier breaks his promise? The next time he is captured, he will be put to death. So why did Major General Sterling Price of the Confederacy do this? Well, he has an agreement with Major General John C. Fremont of the Union. Once he paroles the Union men, there will be an agreement. Specifically, all those who have been paroled, Confederates who were paroled after Camp Jackson, and the Union who's being paroled after this, will actually be allowed to go back to fighting. Now, when the final agreement comes down to it and is put in writing, Union officers are accounted for, Confederate soldiers and Confederate officers are accounted for, but normal Union soldiers aren't written down. I really do hope that nothing comes of this. Though not every Union soldier agrees to being paroled. One very important one doesn't. Colonel Mulligan himself. It seems like the life of a POW is for him. But Major General Sterling Price is quite impressed by Colonel Mulligan, and to honor his now surrendered foe, allows him to return to Union lines, and even gives him his own personal buggy and horse to get him there. It seems like there's a little heartwarming story after the brutality of the siege. And the fighting is over the week because on the 24th, the Battle of Canada Alamosa in Confederate Arizona. But this one isn't specifically the Apache. 100 Union cavalrymen under Captain Minks face off against 112 Confederate cavalry, give or take a few, under Captain Bethel Copwood. Now it is 5 p.m. in the afternoon, right as the sun is going down, that the Union learn that there are Confederate forces nearby. So they send out 6 scouts, aided with some Mexican settlers nearby, to go find the enemy. They don't find really Confederates. They do come across a group of Union deserters. But before they can talk to them, the deserters run away. Back at the main Union camp, some horses break loose, and 10 men are sent to go after them and retrieve them. But Captain Minks is having a hard time keeping order, so it's around 30 cavalrymen that go after these horses. The horses have ran across the river, so in a very disorganized way, which is, to sum up, the entire State of the Union affairs in Arizona at this point, the men cross the river, wet, angry, the sun, just still having enough heat to make them quite uncomfortable. They emerge out of the river, and then an Apache yell. But as I said earlier, it's not the Apache that are fighting here. It's around a dozen Confederate cavalrymen who open fire on the disorganized group. The Union then return fire, which is something the Confederates don't expect. So the Confederates get on their horses and withdraw. The Union, emboldened by this, advanced towards a nearby town where they heard the Confederates are stationed at. It takes till the next morning of the 25th for the Union to be fully ready to attack the Confederates stationed at their town in Arizona. You remember, that was a small group of 30 men, separate from the full Union force of 100. When they finally reach towards the town, they expect around 50 Confederates there. They then take a stunningly devastating volley. Their low assumptions of the Confederate force are obviously not correct. They engage in a firefight, but it's obvious it's not going good for them. Then, another volley. Yes, Cropwood has his main force stationed in the town, which is causing the Union such difficulty. But he also sent a smaller force to a nearby hill, which is very bad for the Union because they're not at risk of being flanked. It doesn't take a military genius to recognize this. Many of the common men really don't like their chances and aren't willing to roll the dice with their lives. So, some desert, some merely withdraw back to their camp without waiting for orders. Be it desertion or tactical, uncoordinated withdrawal, if we are to be kind. It leaves around 10 men and Captain Minks left to fight. Captain Minks still has hope in his men, even if they have fled from the field of battle. So, he decides he'll give his life here and now to ensuring that the men that have retreated get back safely. They fight for hours. Bravely, might I add. They're up against impossible odds. But as the sun rises, Minks realizes that there's no point in throwing away his men's lives. So between 8 or 9 a.m., he surrenders, and it's a Confederate victory. In order to achieve this victory, 2 Confederates lost their lives, and 7 were wounded. The Union was 4 men dead, 6 wounded, and 12 captured. The same day, Secretary of the Navy Gideon Welles allows for freed slaves, or by their technical term, contraband, to serve in the Navy. And they are actually paid, though things aren't as utopian as they seem. Their official rank is boy, which is the lowest it can be. It's typically for people around the age of 12 or under. This change is, in reality, a compromise. Gideon Welles is a huge abolitionist, but the same sadly can't be said about the rest of America. And there's a lot of political pushback to any sort of emancipation, or could you imagine treating human beings as equals? So this is the best we can do for now. It is politically a tough tightrope to walk, but what's even tougher is fighting for your life. On the 26th, we go back to Arizona, specifically Fort Thorne, Arizona, which is where Bethel Copwood is camping. 101 Union men under Captain Robert Morris face off against Copwood. Specifically, in the morning, right at breakfast time, as his men sit around and enjoy their meal, Copwood sees his pickets run into camp. And it's not because the smell of their delicious breakfast is too enticing. Union force is right behind them. Chasing the pickets, of course, is Captain Robert Morris. And he isn't alone, he brought his force, of course. The Confederates don't realize that they have the Union outnumbered, so they form two lines and engage in a firefight. Fire is given from one line into the other. Union men fall as long as Confederates do it in equal numbers. Both sides are happy keeping this entire fight up. But then the Union starts to run low on ammunition and they're forced to retreat. The Confederates lost 2 men dead and 8 wounded. The Union lose 3 men wounded. Bethel Copwood has successfully fought off against 2 Union attacks. This means that the territory of Confederate Arizona will not be able to be integrated into New Mexico anytime soon. It would be pretty ridiculous to keep them separate, wouldn't it? Also on the 26th, Major General John C. Fremont of the Union takes his army of 38,000 men from St. Louis onto a march heading west. By the end of the day, he and his force have successfully left St. Louis. I mean, it is a big army, it does take some time, but having all of his supply train out of the city does show exactly how quick he is planning on moving. And then there is Sickles. Sickles has come to the unfortunate realization that the only way to get his confirmation to brigadier generalship is from Congress. And Congress, since he's left it, has become 100% immoral, is only swayed by the public opinion. Unlike him, of course. So he has his good friend Wyckoff pass off information onto James Gordon Bennett to write praises of our hero, Sickles. James Gordon Bennett actually hates Sickles, but he really does like Wyckoff because, besides of telling the tales of the greatness of Daniel Edgar Sickles, he also gives information on the president and a lot of inside politics in Washington, D.C. So not to lose his source, he does write the praises of our hero. If you remember, back at the beginning of this episode, I opened up with how the Apache had went from being the minor threat to Confederate Arizona to being the main threat of Arizona. I have yet to actually talk about the Apache this week. That's because they don't actually do anything this week, besides from some movements, and of course, you know, citizens of the Apache Nation, and more importantly, civilians just getting on with their lives. They don't have military movements worth noting, no promotions, but they are now the only threat. The Union has been forced out of Confederate Arizona. I mean, Lexington. The Battle of Lexington is where our nation was born. Because of Lexington and conquered, fought by active men, of course. But I'm not scared as I once was. Wilson's Creek, Bull Run, those were terrifying. Those made me feel like all of America was coming undone. But here, Lexington, 3,000 men captured. That is some of the highest casualty rates we can get, if you count captured as casualties. That's 3 times the amount of casualties at Wilson's Creek. But Lexington, Fort Thorne, Canada-Almosa, these aren't major events. Certainly not as Bull Run or Wilson's Creek. The war has grown. The victories in the past terrified the public as it did me, as I have, of course, said. But victories aren't as triumphal as before. Defeats aren't as saddening. More men are being recruited. That means if we lose 1,000 now, it isn't the same as before. It also means victories don't matter as much. It doesn't. How will the war end? Will it end soon? It only seems to grow and grow. There's no downturn. Events keep piling up and up. We have had 3-week siege. Well, obviously not actually 3 weeks, just takes me 3 weeks to cover the siege of Lexington. That's new. The Union has been forced out of Arizona. Arizona isn't that important. Just means more lives will have to be lost taking it again. No action in the East, where it seems like the main war is being fought. Fremont is marching to battle. But Nathaniel Lyon did, and he died. His forces were routed. Fremont can either win a victory, and then Major General Sterling Price will be forced back. Missouri Guard might be captured, but the war won't end. The war can't end. It hasn't consumed enough lives yet. Once again, with the mic and setup issue, please tell me what you think in the comments below. I'm actually going to have a pinned comment asking for this because I really want to know. I'm not good at setting this stuff up. I'm good at history mostly, and telling people information that in such a way that makes me more of a prick than I normally am, which is a hard task to do. But thank you for watching. I have seen so much growth recently, and I'm very thankful to every single one of you who takes time to watch me goofily dress up, buy stuff I don't know how to use and probably don't need, copy history from authors who know way more than me. And I really do hope that you do get something out of it. Like, this is a meta-analysis, and maybe I saved you some reading. Maybe I have shown a topic you're interested in. Maybe this is charity. Probably the last one. I have a feeling pity takes a lot of part in this.
Hello! It's literally the entire Civil War week by week team here. This time, in a spiffy costume. Now, if you liked the video, please click like. If you want to see more, you should be seeing around now a recommended video for those of you with low commitment. For those of you with slightly higher commitment, there should also be a playlist of the entire war up till now, plus this week's episode. And if you want to see more, or the entire Civil War depresses you, and you're very worried, so you don't want any information about the possible Confederate invasion, which is coming right towards you, Maine, then don't subscribe. But for those of you who are willing to defend Maine, which is in imminent danger, please subscribe. For those of you who disliked the video, you're probably a traitor. Lincoln!